philosophy known as absurdism saves my life on a daily basis, and looking at its competitors in philosophy, it's pretty obvious why. So in this video, I'll give you an overview of what absurdism is, why it beats all other popular philosophies, and most importantly, how to use it to find some sort of therapy in a world that makes absolutely no sense. First off, what is absurdism? Absurdism represents the tension between two things. The first being our inherent need for meaning, and the second is living in a universe that gives no meaning, a universe that remains silent. The tension between those two things, us wanting meaning and the universe not giving us meaning, represents the absurd. That's all you need to know. I could bore you with a lot more details, like how absurdism concentrates more on the relationship between us, the humans, with the absurd and not on the absurd itself, or how the main question of absurdism is whether or not suicide is justified, or, how do we prevent suicide using the absurd, rebelling against the absurd. But you'll learn all about that in like the next 10 minutes. So for now, you only need the basics. Living life through an absurdist lens means knowing that life is inherently meaningless, that it is going to end, we are all going to die, there is no meaning to this. I repeat, there is no meaning to life, but we are happy about that. That gives us the liberty to do things that we couldn't have found possible before. It gives us the liberty to be free of embarrassment and free of regret in the future. Now you might be asking, Elias, if absurdism tells you that life is inherently meaningless and that we are all going to die anyway and that there aren't any clear consequences to your actions, why aren't you recording shirtless at the moment? It would be more comfortable and it would be something to do that is in accordance with your philosophy. Well, yes, dear viewer, but there's a bit of a loophole, and that is pragmatic absurdism. I myself am a pragmatic absurdist, which means that I do not think that life has a meaning. Life has no inherent meaning, we're all going to die anyway, whatever, but I still seek to do the things that are most useful because of some, irrational motive. I still want to boost my false sentiment of self-worth and live the greatest life possible, full of glory and dignity. And filming half naked doesn't really get me closer to that goal. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's start comparing absurdism to other philosophies and see why it's so much better. Let's begin with the two main competitors of absurdism. The first and most pronounced being nihilism. It is the belief in nothing. And the easiest way to describe it is as being sad absurdism. It is the idea that we are all going to die, life is meaningless, I don't believe in nothing, and that's pretty much it. Nihilism accepts the void and collapses into it, whilst absurdism accepts the void and dances on top of it. One surrenders and the other rebels. This idea of rebellion is one of my personal favorite things about absurdism, because it lets you see life as meaningless and lets you see yourself as a rebel fighting against that, which is pretty cool, for reasons I will mention a little bit later. Succumbing to nihilism means falling into despair. It is a philosophy strictly reserved for the people who couldn't grasp absurdism in time, or who couldn't understand it. And also for people who can't really see the joy and beauty of meaninglessness, as weird as that sounds. Of course, it's none of their fault. You cannot really blame them for being nihilists. Nobody controls their nihilism. But what you can do so that you don't fall into despair and ultimately nihilism is seeing everything that lacks meaning as another challenge for the human spirit, for the human person that is you. And you do all of that by using absurdism, really. Nihilism isn't even a competitor, in my opinion, because absurdism is a branch of nihilism, in my opinion. Not a branch. They're two completely different philosophies, but it's basically happy nihilism. It's happy goddamn nihilism. The second main competitor of absurdism is existentialism. The idea that life does have an inherent meaning for every single person in particular. Existentialists like Viktor Frankl also believe that life can have multiple meanings in a single life. You can say that you want to do this, you want this to be the meaning of your life, and when you're done with that, you move on to a different meaning. And in my opinion, from an existentialist lens, that is the best way of looking at it. It's fantastic. And I feel confident in saying that because for a really, really long time, I myself was an existentialist. Mostly because I couldn't put Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, down, which is a mandatory read for all aspiring philosophers and maybe even, or especially, psychologists. It's a must-read if you want to understand existentialism. But the main thing that made me abandon it, my main problem with existentialism, is the amount of stress it puts on the believer on finding a meaning of life. I found it quite hard sticking to a single meaning, or finding one, to be honest. And yeah, that's probably because I'm 14 years old and I still have to learn a lot about myself and the world and about what I like. But the whole idea of find a meaning of life, or find your meaning of life, or else, doesn't really work. Now, an existentialist might refute by saying that life needs to be stressful for it to be meaningful. But as an absurdist, I would say, screw your meaning, there is none, and your struggle, your desperation to find one is evidence of my absurdist point. You want meaning, you desperately want meaning, but the universe doesn't hand it to you. And your persistent effort to look for one, even though there clearly isn't, you won't fucking find it anywhere, is evidence that you are not admitting that there is something absurd happening here. No hate to my fellow existentialists, I just don't agree with you, and we can debate in the comments if you like. Moving away from the two main competitors of absurdism, we have Stoicism, a philosophy that I also heavily endorsed in my early days of YouTube. These are still the early days, but my early days of YouTube. Yet again, I have a problem with this philosophy, by the way. In my opinion, it betrays the lack of meaning by making self-improvement the meaning of life. At least in my opinion, looking at the Stoics, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, they made self-improvement the meaning of their lives. And in my opinion, as I said in this video right here, that is shallow, arrogant, and ultimately not going to make you happy. It's an unbalanced focus because absurdism focuses on the relationship between us and the absurd, but Stoicism admittedly also focuses on emotional control and how we interact with others, but the focus is unbalanced. It focuses a lot more on yourself than on the exterior things. It focuses on the relationship with them, it focuses on yourself, but it doesn't focus on themselves, like the other things, external things that provoke emotions and such, like absurdism does. I could talk for 12 more hours about how other philosophies pale in comparison to absurdism. Like how religion is fundamentally flawed because it expects everybody to embrace a certain meaning of life and worship a deity like Allah or Jesus or whatever the fuck it wants. Or like how pure atheism, just saying I don't believe in God and nothing else, doesn't work because there is no way of being consistent in that belief when things get rough, etc., etc., etc. You can watch this video on how religion has become basically a joke now if you want more of the deep reflection. But you get the point. Absurdism is the most beautiful philosophy. It is everything you would want in a philosophy. It protects you from the depression of sad times. It protects you from the blindness of good times. It protects you from things like suicide and the horrors of ego. It is everything and nothing at the same time. Read these two books if you want to understand absurdism better. Comment down below your take on philosophy. Tell me what you thought about this video, and I will see you later, and stronger and smarter than ever.